My name is Hannah, and the love of my life is Ethan. We've been friends for nearly 7 years and deeply in love for over 4. Ethan is everything I ever dreamed of in a partner. Charming, handsome, and financially secure, thanks to his steady job. He's been working hard since he was just 15, never once regretting his dedication. Ethan is the kind of man who takes pride in providing for his family, and it's one of the things I admire most about him. While he grew up by the coast, I come from a bustling city in the heart of the country. We tied the knot 2 years after we met, just 1 month after falling in love at 19. My parents were supportive of our union, but Ethan's family had their reservations at first. They accused me of manipulating him into marriage, even though I was a virgin with no prior relationships or children. I've never understood how they could see it that way. Since I was 17, I've been working hard too. I started as a receptionist at a local hotel. Ethan, on the other hand, had a couple of past relationships, though he only openly admits to one. It's still a mystery to me why his family directed their blame at me. But despite the rocky start, they eventually accepted me as one of their own. And now we all share a deep bond of trust and happiness. Ethan and I have been in love and married for nearly 4 years now, and life is wonderful. I handle the cooking and cleaning for him and eagerly meet any of his needs, including in our intimate moments. I never say no to him, and we both find immense joy in each other. He's everything I could ever want, and I wouldn't trade our life together for anything. But this is where things start to get complicated. I've been working at the hotel with a man named Luke since the very beginning. Luke, who's 32, takes care of maintenance and janitorial tasks around the building. Let me be absolutely clear. I have no romantic feelings for Luke whatsoever. He's just a kind-hearted person who has had a rough go of things. His wife cheated on him, and when she left, she took their son with her. A paternity test later revealed that the child wasn't biologically his, uncovering her affair and implicating another man as the father. Luke is not just a colleague but also a friend, loved by everyone at the hotel. When this heartbreaking situation unfolded, he was devastated. He even took time off work, something he had never done in his 13 years on the job. Before that, he'd never missed a single day. I was deeply worried about him and decided to do what I could to lift his spirits. I started talking to him more at work and invited him to join me and our other coworkers for lunch breaks in the staff room or outside in the sunshine. Luke feels like he's lost his sense of manhood because of what his ex-wife did to him. He's convinced no woman will ever want him again, and it's been eating him up inside. I told him I didn't believe that for a second. Any woman would be lucky to have him. He's kind, gentle, a reliable provider, and a loving father, despite everything he's been through. There's more to his story, but I'll share that later. As our conversations continued over the weeks, an idea began to form in my mind. I thought I could help Luke rebuild his confidence, and at the same time explore something new in my own life, a relationship with someone other than Ethan, something I've never done before. This would help me resolve a lingering question in my heart. I decided to bring this up with Ethan. After dinner one night, once we'd finished cleaning up, I sat down with him to talk. I shared my thoughts and ideas, explaining everything carefully. Ethan burst out laughing, shaking his head in disbelief. He thought I was joking. I quickly assured him I wasn't and explained why I thought this could be a good solution for both Luke and me. I emphasized that he had nothing to worry about. I wasn't attracted to Luke in the slightest. Ethan didn't take it well. He stormed off to our bedroom and slammed the door behind him. Still, he didn't lock it, and I knew what he needed. To show him how much I love and cherish him, I slipped off my clothes and joined him in bed. Ethan can never resist me, just as I can't resist him. Even after 4 years, our passion hasn't faded. We spent the night together as we always do, completely in love. The next day, I decided to give him some time before bringing up the idea again. When I finally asked if he'd thought it over, his answer was clear. He said he wouldn't agree to it and warned me that if I went through with it, he would file for divorce and cut all ties with me. I calmly accepted his decision, saying okay, and sat down beside him to watch a movie. Eventually, I offered to get him a treat. Ethan and I spent the night together on the couch, still deeply connected and very much in love. However, I began to notice that something seemed off. He was distant, his mind clearly preoccupied with matters beyond our intimate moments or the meals I lovingly prepared for him. Ethan started taking phone calls outside our apartment or speaking in hushed tones from the spare room. While my suspicions were piqued, there wasn't any concrete evidence to go on. The days passed, and soon it was Sunday. After attending church, Ethan began preparing for his annual 4-day fishing trip with his family by the coast. This tradition was something he cherished, and I had no problem with it, understanding how important it was for him to bond with the other men in his life. Before he left, I decided to bring up my suggestion one last time. Ethan appeared irritated but replied firmly, "Hannah, you're a grown woman, and I can't dictate your actions. If this is what you want, I can't stop you. You already know where I stand on the matter." I hugged him, kissed him, and thanked him for trying to be understanding, though he gave me a strange look before getting into his car and driving off. As he left, he reminded me to remember his words, and I assured him of my love. That night, I sent him affectionate texts, letting him know how much I missed him. The next day, during lunch, I met with Luke and shared my idea. He was completely taken aback and hadn't expected anything like this. At first, he flat out refused, telling me he couldn't be involved with a married woman. I explained that while my husband didn't approve, he had given me the freedom to decide, and this was something I truly wanted. Luke spent all of Monday night thinking it over, unable to sleep. When we met again on Tuesday, he agreed, but only on the condition that both Ethan and I were fully comfortable with it. He emphasized that it would be strictly physical, with no emotional ties. I assured Luke that I had no romantic feelings for him. He was a kind man, but not someone I found attractive in any way. That evening, I went to his small, cozy home. We had our encounter using protection, and there was no kissing or emotional intimacy, just the physical act. It was over quickly, satisfying Luke's needs while allowing me to put an end to my curiosity. For me, it was purely about answering a question I'd long wondered about. The experience itself held no significance. Later that evening, I sent Ethan a text to let him know everything had gone smoothly. I reassured him that Luke's confidence had been restored and that my curiosity was now resolved. I emphasized that no other man could ever replace him in my heart and that my love for him was unwavering. I also made it clear that the encounter had been entirely physical, with no emotional connection or affection involved, unlike the deep love I shared with him. I wanted to be transparent with Ethan, but he didn't respond that night. I spent the evening restless and filled with worry. Thankfully, the next morning, he sent a message saying he'd be returning home on Saturday instead of Friday. While the extra day apart was difficult, I appreciated his understanding of the situation and was grateful for his love. The following day, Luke and I had lunch together, during which he expressed his heartfelt gratitude. He told me that the experience had helped him regain his confidence and sense of self-worth. He also shared some incredible news. The court had granted him 50% custody of his son, despite the paternity revelations. I was genuinely happy for him and celebrated the milestone. I also explained that, now that our arrangement had fulfilled its purpose, there was no need for us to meet individually for lunch or spend time together beyond work. Luke agreed, thanking me and assuring me he wasn't the type to take advantage of anyone. During this time, I continued sending Ethan loving messages and intimate photos, hoping to remind him how much I cared. His responses were infrequent, as his fishing trip had spotty cell service, but he often mentioned how eager he was to return home. I couldn't wait to see him again, filled with excitement and love as Saturday approached. But everything changed on Friday. After a long day at work and a trip to the store to buy Ethan's favorite foods, I came home to a shocking discovery. The apartment was completely empty, and divorce papers sat on the counter, accompanied by a brief note. The note read, "I thank you and wish you good luck and success with Luke, Ethan." I was devastated, overcome with tears and disbelief. Deep down, I knew this wasn't a decision Ethan had made on his own. It had to have been influenced by his family, who had never fully approved of me. Ethan would never do something like this willingly. He had taken all the furniture, silverware, cups, glasses, and linens, leaving behind only one set of each. Even our king-size bed had been replaced with something else entirely. Ethan left me with only a small twin bed that looked like it came from his nephew's room, a tiny TV, and a single chair. He had taken every kitchen appliance but left behind just a saucepan and a frying pan, along with paper plates, plastic utensils, and paper cups. He even included some basic necessities like toilet paper and paper towels. All I had left were my clothes, toiletries, and makeup. When I tried to call Ethan, I discovered that he had blocked my number. I then reached out to his mom and sister, only to find that they had blocked me too. The same was true for his dad and brother. It became clear that Ethan had been consulting with an attorney during the times he'd been taking calls outside or using the spare room. It seemed this whole process had started shortly after I shared my suggestion with him. A move that felt calculated and deeply hurtful. I sat down to read the letter included with the divorce paperwork. It instructed me to communicate solely through Ethan's attorney, with no direct contact allowed between us. The reality of it all hit me hard, and I broke down in tears. I felt utterly betrayed. Desperate for answers, I called the attorney to figure out what was going on and how I was supposed to survive. I explained that I couldn't afford the apartment on my own. The attorney informed me that Ethan had paid the lease, including basic utilities, for the remaining 3 months of our contract. However, I would be responsible for covering internet, phone, and any other expenses. Additionally, the lease had been terminated, and if I wanted to stay, I would need to negotiate a renewal with the landlord. I couldn't believe this was how Ethan, the love of my life, was treating me. A woman who had given him everything, from love and support to cooking, cleaning, and running errands. Anything Ethan asked for, he got. And now, I was left on the brink of despair, unable to sleep and consumed by heartache. The next day, I went to visit Ethan at his job site. He's a highly skilled concrete worker, one of the best in his field, especially for someone so young. I asked the foreman to let him know I was there and that I still loved him. The foreman promised to pass along the message, but I left feeling crushed. This felt like mourning the death of a loved one, an unbearable loss. I confided in a close friend and coworker, sharing everything that had happened. She was shocked and admitted that while she had once joked about the idea I acted on, she never thought I'd actually go through with it. It was just silly girl talk, she said, clearly uncomfortable. Her reaction only deepened my regret. The following day, I took a bus to the coastal town where Ethan's family lives. Since I don't drive, it was a long and exhausting trip. When I arrived at their home, they weren't exactly welcoming, but they did invite me inside and offered me coffee and a meal. I poured my heart out, explaining the misunderstanding and how much I deeply love Ethan. They listened, but Ethan's mother eventually told me, gently but firmly, that he didn't want to see me again. She suggested it would be best if I didn't contact him anymore. I pleaded with them, explaining that Ethan is my whole world, but it was clear they weren't going to help me. They told me Ethan was working about 60 miles away, and since they didn't invite me to stay, I had no choice but to take the bus back to my empty apartment. The entire journey was spent in tears, and I cried through the night. I even had to take the next day off work to pull myself together. Now, I'm asking for your help. How can I regain my husband's love and fix this misunderstanding? Please, I'm not looking for judgment or criticism. I've had enough of that already. What I truly need are actionable steps to win back Ethan, the love of my life. I can't go on like this, and your advice would mean the world to me. Update 1. I want to address some of the questions I've received. Yes, I believe in God and the sanctity of marriage. Do you? No, I was not unfaithful to my husband, and I would never betray him like that. It's frankly offensive to even suggest such a thing. Yes, I consider myself a good person. How many 24-year-old women do you know who have only been with one man and just one other experience before that? None unless they're nuns. No, I have no intentions of pursuing any kind of relationship with Luke beyond being co-workers. There is absolutely no attraction or desire there. What I did for him was out of kindness, and I believe it's up to God to judge me, not anyone else. No, I will never be with another man in the future. Perhaps you should ask these questions of your own significant other. Why not? Is it because you're afraid of the truth? I did not diminish or disrespect Ethan. If you met him, you'd know he's more of a man than anyone you could imagine. Ethan is more of a man than anyone I've ever known. No, I haven't shared the details of this situation with my parents or other family members yet, but I'm confident they'd be proud of me for doing the right thing and selflessly helping someone in need. No, I have no interest in any intimate encounters with anyone else, and honestly, many of the comments I've seen seem to come from people harboring bitter attitudes. Update 2. Well, here's another update, though it's not a happy one. It's been a full month since I've been without my husband, and I feel hollow and heartbroken. I've done everything I can think of to reach him, but Ethan hasn't responded. I even tried calling from other people's phones, leaving heartfelt messages, but it's clear he's screening his calls. He hasn't returned a single one, no matter how much I've poured my heart out to him. I went so far as to ask Luke to call Ethan and leave him a message. Luke thanked Ethan for his generosity and explained how it saved him from a dark place in his life. He emphasized how much he admired Ethan, calling him a great man and making it clear that there was no love or romantic interest between Luke and me. We were simply co-workers. Despite all of this, Ethan still hasn't responded. Desperate, I decided to tell my parents and brother about the divorce. To my surprise, their reaction was far from supportive. They were furious with me and completely overlooked my good intentions, focusing instead on what they saw as infidelity. No matter how much I explained that it wasn't cheating but a selfless act, they remained unconvinced. They expressed disappointment and even disgust, suggesting I attend confession every day for the next year. I've come to believe that only God can judge me, not the people on this earth, including my family. Final update. I hadn't planned on returning to this post, but a few kind-hearted people have asked for an update, so here it is. First, I really wish I could block all the bitter individuals in the comments. Anyway, here's what's happened since my last update. I'm now living in a community hostel because my lease expired, and I can't afford rent in the capital city. The hostel is decent, but it's just a temporary fix. I could have moved in with my parents, but I chose not to since they don't support my perspective. As for the divorce, it's official now. It might just be the fastest divorce in the country's history, which seems to be my luck. But I'm holding on to my faith that God will see me through this. The judge was quite traditional in his views and seemed to have little regard for modern interpretations of marriage. He dismissed my actions as nothing more than cheating, completely ignoring the context or the help I provided to Luke. He said bluntly, "You can call it whatever you want, but it's cheating and a violation of your marriage." I tried to explain that Ethan had given me permission, but when the judge asked Ethan and his attorney, they both denied it. Ethan stated, "Your Honor, I told her she's a grown woman and I can't stop her, but I also warned her that I would divorce her if she went through with it." My attorney confirmed that this was true. The judge then asked me directly, "Why did you proceed with your affair knowing this?" Neither I nor my attorney had a response. The judge concluded that it didn't matter, as the outcome was already clear. He granted Ethan the divorce and awarded me the equivalent of about $7,000, which Ethan has 90 days to pay. Can you believe it? Just $7,000 for 4 years of love, cooking, cleaning, errands, and caring for Ethan when he was sick. If I had been paid for these services, it would have amounted to over $200,000. Do I think I deserve $200,000? No, but $7,000 feels insulting. Why don't people value women's contributions to marriage more? Can anyone in the comments answer that for me? This will be my last post here. I'm tired of arguing with the unkind people in the comments who don't try to understand my side. I'm emotionally drained. Instead, I'm going to focus all my energy on winning Ethan back over the next year. I've already left him a voicemail promising I won't date anyone else for at least a year, maybe even indefinitely. I told him I'd be waiting for him and gave him my new address, inviting him to come by any time for anything he needs. I believe that one day, I'll hear a knock on my door, and there he'll be, my dream, my Ethan. I imagined Ethan standing on my doorstep one day, ready to embrace me with kisses and welcome me back into his life. We'd live happily ever after, with a house full of children and daily expressions of love. Merry Christmas to everyone, even to those who dislike me and themselves. God's blessings to you all. Now, enough about that story. Let's move on to another one. A tale that's just as dramatic. Stay tuned as we dive in. This event took place over 5 years ago, but the emotional wounds are still fresh. Back then, Mark, was 31 years old, and my girlfriend, Sarah, was 29. We'd been in a loving, committed relationship for 3 years, or so I thought. We first met at a cocktail party at a local art museum. Ironically, neither of us was particularly fond of modern art, but we'd both attended with friends. Despite that, we hit it off immediately. What began as casual dating quickly turned into a serious commitment, as the connection between us felt undeniable. Around a year into our relationship, Sarah brought up the idea of moving in together. She was eager to take things to the next level, but I wasn't quite ready for such a big step and told her so. We continued living separately, but we spent nearly every night together, and our love only deepened as time went on. Over the next year, Sarah kept gently encouraging me to move in, and eventually, on our second anniversary, I agreed. Once we moved in together, things seemed perfect. Our relationship was still exciting, and the intimacy between us hadn't faded at all. It felt like we were growing closer every day. With everything going so well, Sarah began hinting about marriage and starting a family. I told her that I could envision that future with her, but I wanted us to use this time living together to make sure we were ready for such a commitment. About 3 months after we moved in, I received a shocking call from Sarah while I was at work. She told me she'd missed her period and thought she might be pregnant. I was stunned, especially since she'd been on birth control. Sarah assured me she hadn't missed a single dose, so I chalked it up to the small possibility of contraceptive failure. After we hung up, I was overwhelmed with emotions. Fear, excitement, and uncertainty all at once. But as I thought about it more, excitement began to outweigh the fear. The idea of becoming a father filled me with joy. That night, when I got home, I embraced Sarah and told her how thrilled I was. She looked just as happy, and for a moment, everything felt right. As the weeks went by, Sarah started asking about our marriage plans more frequently. I told her I wasn't ready yet, but suggested we revisit the idea after the baby was born. She accepted this, but the topic came up repeatedly, with her emphasizing how much she wanted to be my wife. Over the next few months, we focused on preparing for our child. We turned the spare room into a beautiful nursery, sparing no expense on high-quality furniture and decor. It felt like we were building the perfect life. During Sarah's 7th month of pregnancy, I decided it was time to make our commitment official. I proposed to her in a heartfelt moment, getting down on one knee. Sarah burst into tears of joy, saying, "Yes, yes, yes. I'll marry you, Mark." We were ecstatic. We planned a small civil ceremony at the mayor's office for the following month, intending to have a bigger celebration after the baby's arrival. But just days before the wedding, the baby decided to arrive early. Sarah went into labor at 4 a.m., and by 9 a.m., she had given birth to a healthy baby boy. I was by Sarah's side throughout the delivery, helping her however I could. While the process went relatively smoothly, my heart sank the moment I saw the baby. He had jet black hair, a deep brown complexion, and features that didn't resemble me at all. Both Sarah and I, along with our families, are of Northern European descent. Fair skin, light hair, and no trace of Hispanic heritage. When the baby was placed in Sarah's arms, I glanced at her face. Despite her efforts to look calm, I could see the shock in her eyes. My heart raced as I struggled to process what I was seeing. Still, I maintained my composure and pretended everything was normal. Sarah asked me to hold the baby, and as I did, tears filled my eyes. Not from joy, but from a profound sadness. I knew in my heart that this child wasn't mine. Despite my turmoil, I handed the baby back to Sarah and told her I'd go share the news with our families. I walked out to the waiting room and told them about the baby's arrival. They rushed in to see Sarah and the baby while I excused myself, saying I needed a walk to clear my head. I made my way to a small park near the hospital, where a stream ran quietly through the grounds. There, I broke down completely, crying as my world seemed to fall apart. In those 30 minutes, it felt like my future had shattered. I knew that I'd likely lose both Sarah and the baby I'd been so excited to meet. My phone rang, interrupting my grief. It was my mom. She asked how I was doing, and I replied, "I think so." Then she said, "Son, I understand why you left." That's when I confided, "Mom, the baby isn't mine." Her response was comforting. "Son, I know, and I'll support you no matter what decision you make." With her assurance, I managed to regain my composure. I went to the restroom to freshen up before heading back to Lisa's room. When I returned, only Lisa, her parents, and my mom remained in the room. The baby had been taken to the nursery, and Lisa looked understandably exhausted from the childbirth. I suggested we give her some time to rest, and as we left, Lisa asked if I could stay with her. I gently replied, "Babe, you need rest right now." We headed to the cafeteria and spent a few hours there while Lisa got some sleep. When we returned to her room, I let her parents check on her first. After about 30 minutes, they came out and told me Lisa wanted to see me. I went in, ready to comfort her, but also knowing we needed to have a serious conversation. Lisa started speaking with a smile, expressing her happiness and asking if I felt the same. I reassured her, saying, "I'm glad you and the baby are healthy," but she could tell something was off. "You seem distant," she observed. "Is something wrong?" I hesitated, then said, "We need to talk." She asked, "Talk about what?" I replied, "The baby." Confused, she asked, "What about the baby?" That's when I finally told her, "Lisa, the baby isn't mine." Her immediate reaction was defensive. "What do you mean? Of course, he's your baby. Who else could he be?" I pressed her. "You tell me, Lisa." She broke down into tears, sobbing uncontrollably. I waited, giving her time to gather herself. After what felt like forever, though it was only about 10 minutes, she calmed down, and I asked again, "Who is the father?" Through her tears, she insisted, "You are the father." I shook my head, saying, "Lisa, please don't lie to me." She fell silent, staring blankly ahead. Finally, she whispered, "I'm so sorry, Mark. I was unfaithful, but I want you to be the baby's father." Her plea fell on deaf ears. "No," I said firmly. "Who is the father?" She hesitated, then admitted it was her ex, someone she'd been with for over 5 years. He had come to town 8 months ago, and they'd had a brief encounter at our apartment. I stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the traffic below as my world crumbled. Lisa, panicked, asked, "Is this the end of our relationship?" Without looking at her, I said, "Yes, it is. I'll never be able to trust you again." She started crying and begged for another chance, but I was resolute. "It's over, Lisa," I told her. "You need to tell our parents the truth now because you won't be coming back to our apartment after you and the baby are discharged tomorrow." Tearfully, she pleaded with me to reconsider, but I refused. "No, Lisa, this is happening," I said firmly, then went outside to bring in our parents. Once they were seated, I turned to Lisa and said, "Tell them what we just talked about." Overcome with emotion, she couldn't get a word out, so I explained the situation. Both her parents and my mom started crying, with her parents completely breaking down. I told them that when Lisa was discharged, she would go home with her parents, and I would arrange to have her belongings and the nursery moved to their house. Lisa sobbed uncontrollably as I said this. Then I turned to my mom and said, "Let's go." Lisa screamed, "Mark, please don't leave me. I love you, and I'm so sorry." But I didn't look back. My mom and I walked out, leaving her parents to console her. On the way home, Lisa called me, crying and begging, "Please, Mark, don't end things like this." I replied, "Lisa, I didn't end this, you did. The trust is gone, and the person I loved is no longer here." Despite her continued pleas, I eventually said, "There's nothing more to say," and hung up. The next morning, her father came to the apartment with his van. We packed all of Lisa's belongings and the nursery items, then drove to their house. I helped unload everything and set up the nursery in one of their spare rooms. Before I left, her mother asked if there was any chance I'd reconsider. I told her politely but firmly, "No, I can't. I'll never trust Lisa again, and I can't be a father to a child who isn't mine." Her father drove me back to my apartment, where I spent the rest of the day crying. Over the next week, Lisa bombarded me with calls and texts, over 100 in total. She professed her love and begged for another chance. At one point, she suggested we simply go back to dating as we had before. But I didn't respond, and eventually the messages stopped. This has been the most challenging period of my life. While I have no intention of being part of Lisa or her son's life, I sometimes imagine meeting him when he turns 21. Maybe we'll share a beer, and I'll thank him for his early arrival. It saved me from marrying his mother and making my life even more complicated. My advice to all men is this: consider a pre-birth paternity test for every pregnancy. It might save you from years of heartache and wasted time.